Yeah, no, the other side one. We have at the end a little sale for stuff like that. That was it. There's some stuff we'll wrap it up. Yeah.
We're here at Aloha Tackle in Fountain Valley. Awesome tackle store. They're the host of the event, and it should be epic. All right, let's do it.
And yep, got that one in there. And when you guys are coming to the seminar, we got there you go. Yep, one for me. And we are wrapping off a few of these things here. We got a reel, a couple lures. We wrap off this rod here. And there's some other lure packs and stuff that those guys have put together out there. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great time. Thank you for coming.
Awesome. What's your name, partner?
My name is Rob.
Rob?
Yes, sir.
Great store, man. Great store.
Thank you very much.
You're the host of today's event. I'm the video guy, so
okay.
Awesome.
Very
Great store. I
I
appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you very much.
This is epic.
Yeah.
Okay, name and social security numbers.
Bob Hernandez.
Ruben, Ortiz.
Awesome.
We got some room up here, guys. If you want to come up here closer, there's room up here.
That's pretty high end stuff. That's cheese, as I would say.
Can you talk real quick?
Talk real quick.
Perfect. Thank you. That's it. We're good.
All right. Gonna take it away, Mr. Yep.
Yeah. Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to West Coast Surf Fishing Seminar here at Aloha Tackle. I'm Jeff Waite. I'm the founder of West Coast Surf Fishing. So if you guys are on our Facebook page or follow us on Instagram, thank you very much. We feel we have a great page. And these two gentlemen, Randy and Ruben, are two of my moderators. Rory's around here somewhere. I don't know where he's at. And Richard, who's checking people in right now at the door, he's another one of our moderators. So we appreciate you guys coming. We've got a great seminar for you today. If you've ever seen these guys talk, they give a lot of good advice. They have helped me out tremendously. On top of that, there's some special promotions going on in the store today. So everybody got a raffle ticket, right? When you came in and checked in at the door. So we got some great prizes. We are raffling off a Phoenix Trifecta light rod. $200 rod. So there's like 30 people here. You got a 1 in 10 chance of winning, because we're raffling off that. We're gonna raffle off a Daiwa BG reel. We're gonna raffle off a bunch of other tackle. So there will be 3 main raffle prizes after the seminar's over. And then, as I mentioned, Aloha's got some good promos going. So I helped them put together this tackle pack. This thing would retail for about 35 bucks. It's got a pack of gulp, some weights, some hooks, a Castmaster, and a crocodile, and some swivels. So these are $25 today. If you want one of these, they'll be inside behind the counter. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to these gentlemen and let them take it away. But thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
I just want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank Aloha Tackle for inviting us out, as well as West Coast for having us be your guest speaker today. I'm excited because we normally do about 8 or 10 of these a year, and we haven't been able to do any, right? So last seminar we did was at the Fred Hall show, and so I'm excited to be here. But I want to tell you guys a little bit about us. I'll let Randy start. Let him give you a little bit of background on what he's been doing and why he's here.
Yeah, I've been surf fishing for about 25 years now. I've been fishing since 1966, mostly freshwater, some saltwater. I stopped doing offshore a while back. I took up surf fishing because it's cheap and it's close by for those of us who live near the beach. I am a pro staff for Phoenix Rods, American Tackle. That's just about it.
Cool. Well, background on myself. I same as Randy, when the prices started going up on the boats, I wanted to do something that was fun and get a little exercise, and it wouldn't cost me as much. Started getting into surf fishing about 20 years ago, and it's been a heck of a ride. I really enjoy it. I can go anytime I want. Relatively inexpensive, and it's just a good time. One of the things that has really impressed me about our industry is how much support the vendors give us. You guys all got a goodie bag. To give you an idea, all the sponsors that we have from today, they donated about $1,800 worth of stuff. It all went into your goodie bags or into the raffles, and that means that each of you got about $50, $60 worth of stuff today, right? Not bad, right? So the way you guys can thank us and the vendors is just buy their products. We got Promar. These are the guys that are supporting us, and I'm pro staff with. Would be Promar, Phoenix, Big Hammer, Fish Bites, Sierra Slammers. Thank you. Yes. So those guys, it's amazing how much they support us. I just call them up and say we're having a seminar, and here comes all the stuff we need to make it fun for you guys and memorable. We're going to try and go through the stuff that we're going to talk about, but keep in mind that this is light line surf fishing. Sometimes I get people saying, well, what about this, what about that, and that's fine. There's a lot of ways to approach surf fishing. If your thing is you want to get a chair and a cooler and put a long stick on a sand spike, that's perfectly fine. We're not going to knock anybody if that's what they want to do. What we're going to talk about today is light line surf fishing, and light line surf fishing is a mobile activity where we hunt the fish more than wait for them to come to us. Okay, and it may not be for everybody, but at least you guys will get an idea kind of what we're doing and how we're gonna do it. Okay, I see some familiar faces out there. I'm glad you guys came out again, and when we're done, we'll try and answer all your questions. You have an outline. If you didn't get an outline, let me know. We got some extra ones out here. We'll try to stay to the outline, and then hopefully answer all your questions as we go through the process. Cool?
Yeah. Oh, Ruben.
Yeah.
How many times do you go out surf fishing?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's one thing that Randy and I have a lot in common. Of course, Randy just retired, so I'm so jealous of him now because he gets to go every day.
That's why I'm rubbing it in.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I go practically every day now.
Yeah, but I think that's the one thing that separates us from most people is we're just nuts. We go. I could probably, when I was a little younger, I would go every day if I could. And sometimes I'd spend 8 hours on the beach. But if we can impart anything to you guys, is that success on the beach really comes with time. The effort that you put into it, the time you spend going into the sport, it's gonna show in how successful you are. It's not rocket science, and I tell you what, if I had to rank it, I would say number 3 is experience and knowledge, which you guys will help try and get here now, right? Number 2 is time on the water. I can't express to you how important it is to get out there and just try to fish different areas at different times. The number 1 thing is luck. Right place, right time. Fish sometimes they bite better than others, and you never know what it is. You can look at all the moon charts and timetables and talk to all the experts you want, but fish will sometimes turn their nose at you, and other times it's like you can't put a bait in the water without getting hooked up. But I think if you have some knowledge and you spend some time in it, you can maximize those successes.
And you do learn just as much when you don't catch fish as when you do catch fish. So take note of your trips out there, what the tide is, water temperature, conditions. I encourage you just to go out there and fish and enjoy it.
All right, so this particular seminar is going to kind of center around winter fishing, because that's sort of what we're going into. Winter fishing in Southern California isn't exactly you know, Minnesota East Coast, you know, winter fishing. But there is some changes that we want to make sure that we address as we're going out there. You know, there's going to be different baits that we're going to use. There might be different times of the day. Obviously, you know, we're not going to stay out there till, you know, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night because, you know, we just don't have the sunshine, right? So our time's a little limited, and we want to try and make the best that we can with what we got. You know, we're going to have to deal with cold weather, cold water, wind, rain, you know, even lightning, right? So we want to keep an eye on what the weather is going to be like and fish accordingly. It may mean that, you know, instead of fishing the beach, maybe we go fish the bay. And we also kind of keep track of what species are going to be available.
Regarding weather, yeah, watch the news. There are a lot of apps, weather apps. So you can actually plan your trip ahead of time based on weather, surf conditions. For surf conditions, there are many not surf fishing, but surfing sites like surfline.com, Wet Sand, you like Spitcast. I really highly recommend, if you do not live close, that you do look at forecasting to determine whether or not you want to fish over the weekend or on a particular day during the week.
Clothes is a big it's something to plan as well. You know, this time of the year, especially like right now, I mean, if you were to go out early in the morning, you're gonna be, you know, mid-50s in the morning, and then, you know, you get to right now, today it's probably, I don't know, 75, 76 degrees. So I recommend definitely, you know, dress in layers, plan, you know, what time and when you're going to be going out there. As the water cools off, right now the water's still really comfortable. It's probably 65 degrees or so, and you know, so that you can still go out there in shorts. But once that water starts going down below, you know, 61, 62, somewhere in there, it starts to hurt a little bit, you know. And then you might want to wear some waders or at least some neoprene bottoms or something that will help you, you know, stay warm when you're out there. But definitely recommend dressing in layers. The one thing that you want to keep an eye out more than anything else when you're out there during the winter is, you know, this is when we get those big hurricanes down in Mexico, and they'll shoot up through here and they'll create a lot of structure in the sand, which we're going to talk a little bit about structure later. But one of the dangers is they'll create big scallops on the sand, and I'm sure you've seen them, right? These big old scallops. Well, if the waves are kind of big, you could be standing in the valley of one of those. The wave will come up one side and then wash out through the valley. And I myself have had my feet washed out from under me. You know, so you definitely want to be aware of your environment. Keep an eye out, you know, what's going on with the waves. Look out in the horizon, make sure that, you know, you're not getting any, you know, storms coming in or anything like that. Last thing you want to do is be out there, you know, fishing with a lightning rod in your hand, right? I'm not talking about the Berkeley ones either. Anybody ever have a Berkeley lightning rod? I thought that was a great name for a rod. So anyway, anything else on weather or?
What I've read regarding lightning, the rule of thumb is you hear thunder, it's already too close. You need to pack it in.
Yeah, it wouldn't be any fun at all. And that last thing, just, you know, when you go fishing, guys, I see a lot of guys out there fishing bare feet, you know, some. And the other day I got a Lucky Craft that washed up and got stuck in my sandal. That would have been my foot if I hadn't been wearing anything. And then there was one time that I stepped on a hypodermic needle, you know, and got in the bottom of my sandal. So I just recommend you do wear some sort of feet protection when you're out.
Especially after it rains.
Yeah.
All the beaches are full of debris.
Especially the closer you get to one of the river channels.
Long Beach, Harbor, always debris ridden. Orange County beaches, and I guess Santa Monica Bay. After it rains, there's a lot of debris on the beach, so be very careful to go barefoot.
Malibu. Those channel up there can be all kinds of debris up there.
Yeah, everywhere.
Very good flood control up there.
Everywhere there's flood control outlets, you got to be very careful.
All right, so let's talk about where to go fishing. You know, that's one of the things that I get asked more than anything else is, you know, I put up a post, they caught a nice fish. First thing you want to know is, where'd you catch that, right? Because everybody wants to go where the fishing is hot. Well, the fishing stays hot. The most I've ever seen it stay good in one area is probably 4 days. You know, so I mean, on average. You know, everything changes, right? Moon phases changes, the tide changes, all that stuff. So and just because, you know, one guy catches a good fish in one particular area doesn't mean that you can go there and catch that same fish, right? Every day is going to be different. But what I do recommend is that you do your homework and scout out the areas that you want to fish. We want to look for the right telltale signs that are going to help us catch fish. And primary to anything else is structure. And by structure, I mean areas where the fish can congregate and hide. Okay, fish by nature are pretty lazy. You know, they're cold-blooded. They don't want to waste a lot of energy, so they're going to look for areas where they can hide and ambush. That means that the bait's got to come to them. That means you got to have some sort of current, some kind of water movement. If the water out there is just stagnant, flat, the fish are probably not going to be doing much eating. They're probably just going to be waiting for the water to start moving. Okay, so we talked about the waves making those scallops and stuff. Well, the same waves and the currents are going to make trenches and channels and holes, and that's what we're looking for. So if you can get out early into an area, scout it out at low tide, and see where those valleys and trenches and holes and stuff are in the sand, those are the areas that you want to come back later and fish as the tide's coming in or going out. People ask me that all the time, you know, which is better, incoming tide or outgoing tide? And I say yes. Okay, it doesn't matter. As long as you got some water movement, different species of fish will you know, correlate to that structure at different times. If the tide's coming in, you might get perch come in first, and then you might get some yellowfin croaker. And then as the tide's going out, you got all these little pools that are kind of out there along the edge of the sand. The corbina may be, you know, patrolling those in there. You could have a bank further out, and you've got spot fin hanging out in there. So it just depends on the time of day and what the water's doing in correlation to the structure.
Oh, on that subject, since we're all part of West Coast Surf Fishing Facebook, I had posted a long post with photographs and some explanations on structure, what it looks like, and how to fish it. So I really highly recommend that you go to that post and look at that posting. Just do a search on structure and you should find it.
I'm gonna pass some of these around, but this is just a good illustration of a low tide situation, right? So you got a nice low tide here, and we can see where the structure's at. There's a nice trough that's developing there. This is something that you would come back and fish as it's filling in, or right before it drains out. Right before it drains out, it's probably the better time, because that's when you're going to be able to see the corbina in there. So I'll pass that one around. And another one that we can look at is this one here. What we're looking at here is that dark water. See how we got suds up here, right? You got the whitewash from the wave, and then we got the same thing going on at the bottom. But in between, we've got lighter water, and then we got the dark water, and then we got light water again. Those edges in there is where the fish are going to hang out. As that wave goes up the sand and retreats back, it's going to take nourishment and food and maybe some sand crabs, whatever, you know, some sandworms back with it, and the fish are generally going to be hanging out right along that edge. If you've ever seen corbina swimming in the shallows, they're right on the edge, and they come up with the wave and go back into the hole with the wave, right? So they're looking for this food to come into those troughs.
The other area that we will target, especially on troughs like that, is where the water is dumping in. If you got a trough like that, there'll be an area that is shallower and probably where the water is just flowing into the trough. If you like to work on the shallow area, let the current take your sand crab or your bait or whatever into that trough. One way to work that piece of structure. Another way is to have a light enough weight and just toss it into the trough and just walk along with the weight.
So I'm gonna pass this one around. This is a little low tide situation. But look at this picture real carefully, because this is classic of what you want to look for when you're out there, okay? What we got going on here is if you look careful, there's a line that comes across here. Okay, that's where the sand was. If you see it breaking up here, there's sandbank up here. So you got that classic thing that we were talking about, right? You notice how the waves are kind of making whitewash here, but it dissipates here, and there's nothing in between. And again, we got the whitewash at the bottom. What was happening in this situation is the water's coming across, and it was dumping into this hole sideways. There was a pretty good current, but it was dumping into that hole. And the Corbina were hanging right on the edge. And all we were doing was we were casting off to this end with a light weight and letting the weight carry the bait into that trough and then retrieving so it came back across here. And I don't know how many Corbina and perch we pulled out of this hole that one day. It was pretty ridiculous, but they were all congregated in there. If you step 20 feet this way, nothing. If you went this way, nothing. They were all in that hole. So look at this and kind of study and get an idea of what we're talking about here.
So, can I ask you a question on this?
Sure.
So if that's there on Tuesday,
Yep.
you go back Thursday, it may not be there, right?
It may not be there
on Wednesday. What you're going to see is that the sand's going to move. Now that hole may be there, but it may be 20, 30 feet down. Because that sand, what it's doing is the water's coming in, it's dumping sand into the hole, and that same action is carving sand out of the hole and pushing it out. So that hole will gravitate down the beach, and usually what happens is it'll create a big hole, and it'll start moving down the beach and get smaller as it goes until it disappears.
Yeah, we've seen a hole disappear
Overnight.
in an hour, overnight, even during the same session.
Yep.
I looked at Ruben and he said 4 days. We've been on a good piece of structure for a month. It does happen, but the average is about a week, 4 days.
Okay.
It depends on the size of the structure and how it's set up. You know, I know that when he's talking about where we were on there for a month, and that was rare. I'd say about a month ago, we were fishing a hole down at Huntington that literally moved two lifeguard towers in 3 days, and on the fourth day we watched it disappear before our eyes.
So it just filled in.
It just filled in because the current was pushing it. Yep.
Yeah, that photograph is going around where you have the hole and the trough. That is money. That is almost guaranteed. If the fish are not there, they will be there.
Yep. Yep. The other thing that you want to try and avoid is disregarding structure. This is one of my favorite pictures. I'll pass it around as well. But I was standing on this beach. I think it's probably Huntington or it might have been down in Newport. But there's this really nice trough that was out here, and I'm sitting there pulling perch out of this trough, and I could see Corbina swimming around, and I was trying to target a couple of them. And these two, really nice guys, they come by, and they said hi to me, and proceeded to walk right through the trough to the sand bank and fished on the sandbank. And I watched them there for about, I don't know, an hour. They never caught anything. They never turned around. And while they were fishing there, I must have caught 10 or 12 fish behind them. So you gotta make sure that you don't ignore this. The fish on the sand, which you remember is all the fish are probably going to be within 30 feet of where you're standing. They're not, there's fish way out there, but probably nothing you want to catch. Most of the fish is going to be close to shore. So I'll pass this one around here too. So remember, dark water. There's something else that we call nervous water too. Sometimes you'll see the beach out, or the water out there, and it'll look flat in certain areas, but other areas it looks like the water is really ripply, and there'll be like just one area where the water is kind of ripply. Randy coined that as nervous water, right? So for whatever reason, there's something there that's causing a disturbance underneath the water that's causing it to ripple, and that tends to congregate fish as well. And if you see that, cast into it, cast ahead of it, let your bait float into it, and there's usually good fishing there.
There are times when on the hard pack you get these scallops. What happens is the waves come up onto the hard pack, come up and flows down the center of these scallops. Down the center is an area that fish will congregate because all the food is washing down right into that area. So you look for areas where you got this good water flow, the waves, currents, anything that might be washing food into a hole.
I find with also if you get to fish a jetty, one of the best times to fish the jetties, which kind of goes against what we talked about, is the right at the high tide or the low tide. When that water slows down going through a jetty, that's when the fish tend to kind of move one way or the other, and a lot of times they'll be in the channel at those high and low points, and that's a good time to target them as well.
When you cast, do you want that to flow away from you or to flow into you? Like if the current's going this way, should I be standing to the left of the current, or should I be, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it depends a lot on what the structure looks like. Okay, if we're talking about a hole, then we want to figure out how that water's flowing through the hole. If we're talking about a channel, then we might walk with the channel. If the channel is more of a rip and it's going out, then we might be bringing it in, but you definitely want your bait to flow with whatever the water is doing. So it's not so much that you need to figure it out, you just need to watch what your bait is doing. Cast in front of it, watch where the wave takes it, and there'll be some areas that are faster and slower. You want to kind of get to the edges of where the current's at and get that to where where the fish are probably going to be sitting waiting to ambush.
Yeah, I find myself, once I'm standing and making casts, I will take note of where it's dropping down and imagining how my weight is flowing with the current. Now when I get a bite, I'll repeat that cast over and over and over again. If I happen to catch a big fish, I will definitely mark where I'm fishing from, because a fish will take you down the beach. You want to get back to the same original spot and make that cast again. So a lot of it's muscle memory. To answer your question too, I try to keep my weight in the bite zone as long as possible. So if I think I could adjust my positioning to get into that bite zone and keep my bait or whatever I have in there longer, I will adjust my positioning. But always take note of where you are, because any big corbina, spot fin, bat ray, what else? Yellowfin croaker,
Shovel nose,
they could take you off your spot. Do you want to stay there? I'll mark holes off during low tide. Any way you want. You can use a piece of seaweed. I tend to dig holes into the sand, mark them with a line. That's a guarantee. You catch a big fish, you take you down 50 yards, 25 yards, and you want to get back to that spot again.
I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a hole down in Huntington Beach. It was the hole was probably, I'd say, 30 feet wide and maybe, 50, 60 feet long. But it had a definite entrance and an exit. And we would go to one end of it, cast into it, and walk with our bait down the hole. And there was spot fin in there, and when you hooked one, it was going to take you down the beach somewhere. But it was great because it was repeatable. Every time we did it, you had a really good chance. And I forget how many spot fin we pulled out of that hole, but at one time I think we had 5 or 6 guys that were doing this chain gang, basically doing a rotation and just going in there and getting fish out of that hole. It was really good.
Oh yeah, talk about marking. Low tide, you got a hole, I'll mark the edges. Draw a line like this with my heel up onto the dry sand, so I could actually, when the tide comes in, I know exactly where that hole is. When the tide becomes high, you can't see that hole. And it just helps if you mark locations.
All right, let's move on then. We're going to talk about rods and reels. When it comes to your rod, I mean, whatever you have, if you've got any trout gear, any salmon rods, anything like that, any of that stuff will work. If you're going out there, once or twice a month or something, or once or twice a summer. You know, whatever you have will work. If you're really getting into the sport and you want to, you know, improve on what you have, then what I recommend is you look for a rod that has some length to it to get you, in case you need to get out further. But then also something that has what I call a good shock absorption, okay? If you look at this rod, I mean, if I start here, I mean, I've got a good, I don't know, 10 feet of movement that I can absorb with the rod. You gotta remember that when you're fighting a fish in the surf, it's using the movement of the water to fight you, to help, you know, it wants to get back out in the ocean, right? It doesn't want to come up on the sand. So it's gonna use its body, it's gonna use its weight, it's gonna use its strength to try and, you know, get away from you as best it can. And as the water comes in with a wave, it can't fight that water pressure that as well, you know, as when it's going back out. So you're gonna be able to bring it in, but at some point that water's gonna stop and it's gonna start to rush out. And if you've got too stiff a rod, it's going to, you know, put pressure on the line and you might pull the hook. If you got too soft a rod, you're not gonna be able to put enough pressure on that fish to bring it up, you know, as quickly as possible. It's gonna be a little bit too much. So you want something with good absorption, but also something that shuts off quickly enough so that, you know, you've got some backbone in that rod. Okay, now this is a 10-foot rod. This is a Phoenix Trifecta light. It's rated at 6 to 12. And if you haven't tried one of these, I mean, I don't know how to describe it more than you're missing out. All right, we were here earlier. One of the guys was betting me that I couldn't cast a ½ ounce past that wall over there. You notice my bait,
I saw that. It's all.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up, right? That's because I hit the wall with it. Leave it over here, right?
Call my name and then I'll be able to try one out tomorrow.
You hit the wall from here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can.
yeah, definitely. It was. We measured it from that line right there, kind of where Jeff is standing. It was 168 feet. Okay, so definitely got some power behind it, and you can go light and still be able to reach, you know, some long range areas, right? So the rod, you know, it's not gonna, the fish don't care what brand rod you're fishing, right? But at the end of the day, if you can get out a little further, or if you can land a fish a little faster, it's gonna make a difference for you. And that's where investing in a good rod, you know, from the start is gonna help you.
With a 9-foot or 10-foot rod, I would recommend that you balance it. Ruben added weights back here with, I don't know,
It's like 2.5 ounces.
2.5 ounces.
Yeah.
It seems counterproductive to add weight to a rod, but a long rod like this that's tip heavy can get very cumbersome and really hard on your forearm. Something to consider. Not everybody wants to do that, but I would recommend, if you're doing a lot of casting, to balance the rod out. You want it balanced so that it's around right here.
Now, fishing a long rod is not, you know, everybody's cup of tea. You know, if it takes a little bit of extra skill, it's some muscle memory to get used to, you know, a longer rod. But I find that I can do more with a longer rod than with a shorter rod. But that doesn't mean you can't go out there. This is a 7.5 foot, and you know, this will work fine too. Again, you know, fish don't know the brand of rod you're fishing with, right? But these Trifectas have the right action, and they're very sensitive. You can feel just about everything with them, and they'll certainly help you get out a little further, you know, when you're casting.
I think most of us have started surf fishing. We started off with 7-foot rods. I think you probably did the same. And we just moved up. I'm fishing a 10-foot rod now. I would definitely consider, I would probably recommend a 10-foot rod. To me, it's a lot more versatile.
Go shut your door. Very good. Don't do that.
Did you need this for anything?
Nope.
Okay. Let's put it right here. So, there you go. So yeah, you know, 7.5 to 10 foot is a good length for a rod. Again, make sure that you have something that has a good shut-off point. Oh, forgot to mention one thing that's different about these rods is your typical rod, if it's a two-piece rod, it's going to break right in the middle. What Phoenix did was they changed that break point to about 50, maybe 60, 65% of the rod, so that from here on, it really fishes like a one-piece rod. But it allows you to take, 3.5 or so feet off of it to break it down and be able to transport it in your car instead of trying to transport a 10-foot rod. But that's what makes this rod fish so well, is that it has more action on it, even though it's a two-piece rod. Okay, moving on. Reels. So, I don't know, what do you want to talk about reels?
We use anywhere from 1,000 to a 3,000 size reel. I use a 3,000 on my 10-foot rod. On the shorter rods, I use a 1,000 or a 2,000 size reel. You want to make sure that your reel has good drag, good smooth drag. That's the most important thing. Because you're not only fighting the fish, you're fighting currents, you're fighting surge.
That's the key right there. It's just a smooth drag. It doesn't mean that it has to be an expensive reel. Sedonas have good drags and they're inexpensive. Don't get caught up so much in, you got to have the a $400 reel to be able to fish the surf. To me, I would say anything under $100 that has a good drag on it, you're going to be fine. And the key thing with them is just rinse them off real good after every use. That little Sedona that I've got on there, God, that thing's got to be almost 10 years old. And it survives the surf really well. I just, as soon as I get home, I rinse them off real good, and I dry them and I put them away, and they survive really well.
You use a light spray, right?
Yeah, just a light.
Spray,
most sprayers you got at home will have a mist, option on it. Just use that, and it does really well.
Yeah, if you got cash to burn, then you want to get a Van Staal, which you can just dump in the sand, dump in the water. But to set you back $700.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, there are a lot of old timers that have actually gone that way with Van Staal. So,
Problem is, I don't think they make like a 1,000 size reel. I think they're like 3,000.
Yeah,
or
they
4,000.
are pretty heavy reels. Yeah. I think there's another manufacturer, IVT, I believe, they look like Van Staals. They are about 500.
Yeah.
I don't know how good they are, but there are waterproof reels out there. I can't tell you too much about them. I just know that the old school waterproof reel is Van Staal.
Yeah, and I mean, it's whatever your flavor is, right? I mean, with Sedona like that, if I drop that reel in the sand, where the water's washing up, it's done. There's no fixing it after that. I've had a couple of reels where I've dropped it, or I wasn't watching, and the water hit that full of sand, and I mean, I took those reels apart completely, every nut and bolt, cleaned it, lubed it, put it back together, it's still ground.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you don't get any water splash on it. Your wife comes up, hits your legs, get that rod up high. You don't want a drop on that reel. It may probably have sand in it, so it'll start grinding.
Yeah, whenever I take new people out there, I always tell them, make sure when you're fishing, once you get that fish up, get in the habit of doing this. Don't do this, because that's going to get splashed. I see so many guys do this right here. They hold it and they're trying to do something, and the wave comes up. That reel is history. So just get in the habit of doing that, and you'll be fine. Terminal tackle. So I don't know. I'd say for us, probably 90% of the time we're doing a Carolina rig, right? Anybody not know what a Carolina rig is? Good. All right. So you guys all sit there. I did put a diagram there for you for a Carolina rig. My preference is a bullet weight, primarily because with a bullet weight, it has a recess on it for the bead, which is what Carolina rig is supposed to be used with, is with a bead. So it butts up there really nice against that. look on here, you know, so we got our bullet weight, flushes up real nice against the bead. Bead's there to protect the knot, okay? And then we got a swivel, and then our leader to a hook. The other nice thing that I like about bullet weights is the hole, as it drags through the sand, will get beat up and get smaller. And eventually it'll be a really tiny hole where just the line gets through, and you'll minimize the amount of sand that can get inside. Egg sinkers are designed to use offshore on larger line, and the hole is really big, and what you'll end up getting is sand in there. Next thing you know, you bring it back, and your weight's way up on the line, and it's stuck on there, and you drag it down, and you're just scraping that through sandpaper. And eventually put a rough spot or a nick in your line, and then, you know, get a nice fish, and all your gear's gone, and you wonder what happened, right?
Egg sinker.
Yeah.
Sorry, egg sinker. You want to use a paper clip to just punch out the sand. You always want to check that line for nicks. Also, regarding weight, I don't go over ½ an ounce when I'm fishing a surf. Summertime, most of the time I'm using anywhere from 1/4 to 3/8 because I want that natural presentation. I'm not locking down my bait. I'm letting it flow with the current.
Yeah, that's the most important thing that we can, you know, relate to you guys. You want to make a natural presentation that and that means that weight is only going to be there just enough to kind of put a little resistance and help you to cast, but you want that weight to kind of move with the current. You want it to come to wherever the fish are and go past them like a regular piece of, you know, food that they're eating would come across. They're going to see it kind of pass by them, and they're going to jump at it and grab it. Okay, if you try to get enough weight to hold the bottom, sometimes there isn't enough weight in the world to do that. You know, it'll move, you know, 5 ounces, but it's going to be hard to cast, and it's going to, you know, create an unnatural presentation at that point. So for this type of fishing anyway, we want to use as little weight as we can get away with.
What's the lightest that you'll go?
I've fished 1/8 ounce, dry, just a little split shot. So it all depends.
Yeah, most of the time for corvina fishing, yes, we would probably 1/8, 1/4, but there are times when they're not biting that, then we'll just drop it down to a split shot.
And a lot of times, I mean, I just go out there with a ½ ounce now as a standard weight, because I don't know if I'll be needing situations where I'll have a long cast or they'll be in tight. Now I usually fish with 2 rods. Randy fishes with 1. So I'll have one with ½ ounce and maybe one with 1/4. Maybe I'll have a 10-foot rod and a 7-foot rod, just to allow me, especially if I know I'm going to low tide and I already know that there's a good possibility there's going to be a trench or a hole that I want to fish, and there might be corvina there, then I have that secondary rod to fish in tight and slow, as opposed to, you know, long and a little further out. If you want to go out there and, you know, do the bait and weight type of thing, then the pyramid weights are fine. You can, you know, set up a different setup, you know, like a high-low rig or something like that, you know, and sit and wait for them. Again, that's not what, you know, we're talking about here today, but it's an effective technique. I mean, sometimes, I mean, I've been standing next to guys doing that, and they'll outfish me. You know, because there's times when the fish kind of want a static presentation. Okay, but for the most part, again, we're trying to stay mobile, so we want something that's going to give a little more natural presentation. Hooks.
I use owner mosquito hooks size 8s, 6s and 8s. I don't go any larger than that. I'll sometimes go smaller to 10, depending on what I'm fishing for. Again, with corvina, they could be very, very finicky. I may move down to a 10 or 12 if they're not taking an 8, but it doesn't happen too often. I'm fishing 8s about 95% of the time.
I think we both use a standard mosquito hook. Sometimes J hooks, you know, we'll use those as well, but mostly mosquito hooks. if you don't have a good sensitive rod, or if you're not gonna, you know, fish like we're talking about, if you're gonna bait and wait, it might be a better thing for you guys to use a circle hook. And Order makes a really nice circle hook. In fact, I think some of you got some in your goodie bags. So that's a great option if you don't have the sensitivity to set the hook when you feel that bite. You know, circle hook, they'll just take off and kind of set themselves. Some fish, like spot fin, I think circle hooks on spot fin don't work very well, because spot fin have a tendency to pick up the bait and you will hardly even feel it. It's just a little tiny tap. And if they feel anything funny, they'll just spit it out and go on their way. So, you know, you got to be ready for those fish, because if you don't have a good sharp hook that you can set real easy, chances are you'll probably miss a spot fin.
I should clarify one thing too. I'm talking about bait when I'm using anywhere from 6s to 10s and 12s. When I'm using grubs, I'll use a 6, maybe something a little bit larger, or a bait holder hook, depending on the size of the grub.
Talking about leaders, and that leaders usually, you know, are going to come into effect when you're using your Carolina rig. I like to go anywhere from 12 to 18 inches on a leader. I used to use fluorocarbon all the time, and one time I forgot it at home, and I just, you know, used my main line, and I didn't really notice any difference, and I kind of just stayed that way after that. I do use a Usuri line, which is a hybrid with fluorocarbon in it, so that might be why I think that works for me. The Usuri line has a very low memory. If you look at this, I mean, it doesn't get all squiggly. So it's a really good line, but if you're using if you want to use a lighter leader than your main line, that could be a plus for you. You know, maybe use a 10-pound line and maybe a 4-pound leader. That might be something where it'll help you just kind of, you know, give it a better presentation. Also, fluorocarbon leaders tend to not have any, you know, as much memory, so they won't get all squiggly on you, and they usually tie, you know, a nice knot, and they're a little more abrasion resistant. So there's definitely some advantages to going with a fluorocarbon leader.
Yeah, the discussion on fluorocarbon and monofilament and surf fishing, that argument is a constant on websites and social media. I use fluorocarbon 4-pound because I use it for trout fishing. Also, some other Corbina hunters have sworn by using fluorocarbon, have others that swore by using monofilament. So
try experimenting. You know, like I said, I'd rather be lucky than good any day. So, you know, yeah. I've always said, hey, don't be afraid to try anything.
Yeah, I use fluorocarbon, so why not? You know, if it helps that 10% of the time, 5% of the time, okay, great for me.
Give you an edge, right?
Give me the edge.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
What size main line?
I normally use a 6-pound. I started out with 8, and then I just found that, you know, 6 was good. The only thing I find with 6 is that I kind of waste a lot of line putting it on a reel, because I mean, even a size, this is a 1,000 size, and I think it holds like, I don't know, 185 yards of 6-pound. So what I've been doing is I'll go ahead and put, I'll fill my reels about halfway with braid, like a 20-pound braid, and then just tie on a top shot of about 100 feet to 200 feet of mono on top of that, or the Usuri in this case, and then just change that out, and that way I'm not wasting a bunch of line, and it's just more cost effective in the long run. I've never seen, well, I shouldn't say never, because we did have one time where I got spooled on a fish, but most of the time the fish aren't going to run more than 100 feet or so, and they're going to start getting tired from pulling on the line, and they're going to come back the other way. So, you know, most of the time you're only going to play the fish in those first 100, 150 feet.
Yeah.
curiosity with leaders, do you find that you change the leader? I mean, like I'll change the leader often for the conditions, but do you change it specific to the species that you're going for that day?
No.
Like, do you find that perch want, you know, X amount of leader more?
We played. I mean, the question is, do we change the leader based on the species that we're going after? And I would say not specifically species, maybe more conditions. You know, if it's really rough, a shorter leader tends to get knotted up more. Wouldn't you say? Or is it the other way around?
Longer leader.
I found a longer leader doesn't get knotted up as much. It depends what you're fishing too. Depends how much weight you got. If you're fishing a light sand crab, those are going to get tumbled around a lot. If you're fishing a Sierra Slammer, I find a longer leader seems to, for whatever reason, not get tangled as much.
Yeah, I don't change my leader based on what I'm fishing for.
No, I do check it a lot. Every cast, when I bring up the bait, I always look at my bait. I run my finger down the line, make sure there isn't a knot. Because if you put, you know, they get knots in them, and one knot's enough to ruin your day.
You want to check it for knots, check it for nick. Sierra Slammers, I've caught halibut on them. So after you catch a halibut, you do want to retie because you'll get that nick in that line from their teeth. I use a different setup than Ruben. I can't say there's any right way. It's what I'm comfortable with. I use anywhere from a 10 to 15 pound braid combined with a 6 pound monofilament shock leader, which is about 15 feet, and then 4 pound fluorocarbon. I've been doing it like this, fishing this way for over 10 years. I'm comfortable with it. Is it the right way? He catches just as much fish.
You know, it depends what you're doing too.
Yeah.
I like straight braid when I'm fishing, you know, lures like Castmasters and these flash jigs. I just tie them straight to braid, you know, and actually here I'm doing the opposite. I've got probably 200 yards, 300 yards of 15 pound braid, and the rest is mono underneath it. Just so I don't have to, you know, waste, you know, 500 yards of braid to put it on there, because this is so thin, you know, that you can put a whole spool on there and you'll never use all of it, and probably by the time you ruin the top, or, you know, the tops get old, you want to change it, you're changing all this braid, you're wasting a bunch of money. So I actually top shot it on top of mono at that point.
Yeah, we're also using, remember he's using 2 rods, I'm using 1. There are times that I will be using a Carolina rig, see a nice hole that probably is holding halibut. I could switch over to a drop shot with a 6 pound. It works fine with even a 10-foot rod that's balanced out. So it's just what I'm used to. Others use straight monofilament, longer top shot of monofilament. I just use a short one, which really goes against convention because you had that knot going through the eyes of the rod. So you got to be kind of careful with that. It tends to wear down the knot, so I got to retie that connection periodically so that it remains strong. It does, I hear that it may cause wind knots, things like that. You know, I have problems every so often, but I've gotten used to doing it, using that setup. The length of top shot I use gives me enough shock absorbency, plus I got that non-stretch on the braid, so I could feel every little bite. I could feel the weight going over rocks. So I've gotten used to that, so I could kind of detect, oh, this is a spot fin croaker, corbina bite, perch bite, things like that.
Yeah.
Or a halibut bite.
You catch enough of them, you'll start to know what they are just by the way they fight. Here's a little slightly different setup in a couple different ways. One, this is just a trout rod. I think it's rated 1 to 4, 1 to 8, something like that. But just a little different setup. This is a drop shot. This is great for the bay, great for fishing jetties. Keeps your bait off the bottom, so you can fish a little bit higher off. You can change the length of your leader according to conditions. You can put a little more weight on there, whatever you need to. It's just another option when you're out there. A little different setup. You can experiment with what works. Let's give it a try, right?
So what are the specifics of this setup, like length of rod, everything?
Well, everything can be adjusted to what you're doing. I can put this on a long rod, or I can put it on a short rod. It just, I think I had this set up because I was catching Waialae over in Newport, right off the rocks. So I was just dropping this down. Actually, we're doing this one day. We ended up getting like 2 or 3 spotted bay bass. Really nice ones. On this, it was a lot of fun to land those. Because they love ghost shrimp. It's really good.
It's like a lighter setup then.
Oh yeah, this is much lighter. This, like I said, we're Waialae, little tiny guys, and I mean, I think it's a number 8 hook on there. It's just something lightweight, but you can scale this to whatever you're doing. I mean, you can scale this, go out on the offshore. Put 30-pound line and a 2-aught hook on there and a 4-ounce weight and fish the bottom. You can put 2 hooks on there, and so it's what's called a dropper loop.
Yeah, I've used a heavier weight out in the surf.
Or drop shot, I should say. It's drop shot.
Yeah, for drop shotting. It's an effective method. I use it primarily, really only for fishing for halibut.
Yeah, it works really good with a like a little small swim bait like this, or we don't have the bass tricks out here. The bass tricks. Oh, they're back here. These little guys right here, these are killer. Like you're fishing Long Beach, like Cherry Beach, or inside any of the harbors. Put this bass trick here with maybe like I don't know, what would you say, like size 4 hook maybe?
Yeah.
Jeff, what do you normally use on here, a size 4?
On a bass trick?
Yeah.
I use a 1 Gamakatsu number 1 drop shot hook.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, you do that on a drop shot setup like this, and all you want to do is just cast it out, and then just give it a little tap, let it sit. Reel, give it a little tap, let it sit. Maybe wiggle it every now and then, and it'll drive a halibut nuts. And just about anything will hit it as well, but it's good setup for halibut.
Yeah, halibut hitting a drop shot, it'll be just a tick. Whereas using a swim bait, jerk bait, you'll feel the rod just load up. On a drop shot, it'll be a real subtle tick.
Yep, so this type of setup, there's about 3, maybe more, very similar techniques. They go by different names. You'll hear people talk about a high-low rig, a drop shot, and a dropper loop. And they're all basically the same, where you have a weight at the bottom and 1 or 2 hooks above the hook, and you can change that height depending on where you want it. I mean, you can put it 6 inches from the weight, or you can have 5 feet between the weight and the hook. This depends what structure and what the conditions dictate. Yes.
What are you saying? What's your bait on that setup?
Typically you use that when you're using like a small jig of some sort, like a plastic jig. So you can use something like a Sierra Slammer, the bass tricks. You could use a big hammer. That's what these work real good on there. The gulp worms work well on there. All those, something that mimics a fish or a worm.
Yeah, Berkeley has assorted minnows that look like bait fish. They'll work.
Yeah, that's the killer setup if you're fishing for largemouth bass. Drop shotting for largemouth bass, that's what you do. If you're not using a swim bait of some sort. So it's good stuff. All right, any questions on setups? You all experts? All right, knots. The best knot that you can tie for surf fishing is the one that you can do with one hand tied behind your back while standing on 1 foot, eating a candy bar, jumping up and down. It's whatever, to me there's no real best knot out there. I'm of the school that there's no such thing as 100% knot. All these guys saying, oh, my knot is 110%. Well, I call BS on that, because it's only going to be as strong as the line, right? So if the line's rated at 8 pounds and it breaks at 10, it means that the rating on that line was wrong. It was underrated, right? The knot's not going to be stronger than the line. The knot's always going to be a weak point in your line. So what you want to do is tie a knot that is going to minimize the weakness of the line, and that means having the expertise to tie that knot properly. So whether you tie a Palomar or a clinch or a proof clinch or a Berkeley knot or a nail knot or whatever you put, whatever name you put on there, learn to tie it properly. And by that I mean experiment with, because for example in an improved clinch knot, if you tie it where the knot comes over the main line instead of the tag end of the line, it'll be about 40% weaker. So you got to make sure that you know how to tie that properly. Okay. But practice with it, test it, and then just use that knot, and you'll be fine. Palomar knots are great. A lot of people use Palomars, and those are fantastic knots. They hold really well. I think they've won I don't know how many competitions over the years, so they're a good knot to use. But whatever you want to use, just make that your regular knot.
I'd like to interject something about knots.
Sure.
I know that I had posted recently about practicing, and just to remind people, a lot of what I'll do at home is I just buy a spool of mono, leave it on the, because I go outside to just sit and relax for a few minutes. I put a spool of mono with some clippers and a couple of hooks. And while I'm just sitting there outside, I practice, and that has helped my knots tremendously.
I used to keep a couple of rings, and I would tie knots on the rings and then pull on them or put a scale on them and just practice to see what would be worth. Now I will tell you 2 things about knots. One is always moisten them when you cinch them down. Always moisten them. Don't do it dry. If you cinch a knot down dry, it's going to heat and it's going to weaken that monofilament. So always make sure that you moisten, whether it's saliva or water, whatever. Moisten the knot before you cinch it down. And secondly, always cinch a knot down all the way. Okay? There's like a little pop that most knots will make when they cinch down. You want to make sure you cinch it all down. If it's not cinched down, what's going to happen is it's going to cinch down during your fight. And at that point, with that much stress on it, it could pop the knot. So those are the 2 things that I've learned. Whatever, I don't care what knot it is, just cinch it down and make sure you wet the knot before you cinch it down. All right, let's talk about baits. We're talking about sand crabs.
Sand crabs. One of the free baits you can find out here. Right now, the water's getting cold. You don't see too many of them. What you look for on the sand are pimple marks. Also, when the waves come up onto the hard pack, you look for tiny V's. You get these areas that look like this, caused by the water receding, and their little antennae are out. They're filter feeding. So it's causing a little tiny wake, which causes this type of look. That as a water
how the water is looking on the whole picture, or can you point out specific?
Right here.
Okay.
Right here. When it's cold, like it is now, you might be able to find them next to structure like jetties, rock jetties, and piers. Can be difficult to find when the water gets cold and the weather gets cold. Let me pass this around.
Thank you. Oops, sorry.
Where do the sand crabs go when it gets cold?
We hear the deeper water, or they go down, they dig down deeper.
My theory is I think they go dormant.
The question is, where do they go in the wintertime when the water gets cold? Could be in deeper water, or could be deeper in the sand.
Go to Florida.
Or go to Florida.
Yeah, they have a condo out there.
Yeah, that's why on that subject, you could always buy lugworms or bloodworms, ghost shrimp, which we'll talk about.
And that's, you know, I always tell people, have a variety of baits available for you, you know, because you could go to the beach with all the plans in the world to fish sand crabs, and you won't find any. And then what are you going to do, right? Now, there is a product that I've been testing, which is pretty cool. These are made by Top Notch, and they're little sand crabs.
It's like a fly, right?
It's like a fly, yep. And they work. I've caught, you know, I think I caught Corbina and a couple of yellowfin croaker on this. And the guy who invented these actually caught a couple of spot fin on them. Yes?
Is there a certain special way we can hook sand crabs, or will you recommend that we have the natural,
Yep. You want to cover that?
You don't need photograph. There's two ways to hook it. The question is, how do you hook sand crabs? One way is to hook it through the bottom. There's a small digger shaped like this on a butt end.
The one that tucks in like that?
Yeah, it tucks in.
That's the digger.
That's a digger.
Okay.
What we do is we go through that and out the back, the butt end of the sand crab. The other way is to hook it on top. There is a connection between the shell. You got the carapace on top, the big shell, and the butt end right here. There's a hinge right here. You could hook it underneath and out through the top. Now, if you do it this way, it leaves the digger free, legs free, and they tend to dig down, but it is an effective way to hook them.
Yep. So I like sometimes letting them dig like that, because you can, once they start digging, you can pop them a little bit and pull them out, and that will attract a fish sometimes to attack the bait. The way you find sand crabs is a couple of different options. One that we carry, it's a lot more mobile, is to carry a net like this from Palomar. These, I like these specifically because they have a wider mesh. A lot of the bait nets that are on the market will have a real fine mesh, and that just doesn't help you when you're trying to sift sand and rocks through them. And plus the little tiny sand crabs can filter through this, and you get the little bigger ones that are better for bait. But this will, you know, you put this on your waistband or in your backpack, and they'll work really well. But what you want to do with this is you want to, and really any method, any of the methods is the same. Once you find that area, like we're passing around in the picture, you want to identify where the sand crab bed is, wait for the water to come up, and as it's washing out, you walk out with it, put the sand crab net into the sand, and then just shuffle or dig your feet into the sand. Okay, that'll scare the sand crabs, and they'll start, you know, wanting to go back with the current, and they'll go right into the net. Okay. Another method, once you do that though, the ones that don't swim away are going to dig down. All right. So if you go back up there and you do that again, you're not getting a lot. They're probably down deeper. So now you're going to just go down there and scoop some sand up, and usually go about 4 or 5 inches down, and you can scoop the sand out of there, dig a little hole in front of the net, and you get some more out of there. If you're going down and you're getting you know, bait for you and all your friends, this is a much, you know, more productive way to do it, right? Obviously it's bigger. You can get, if you get in a good bed, you do this once, and you'll probably have 100 sand crabs in there, and you can.
There's a limit, right?
There's a 50 sand crab limit. You don't want to have any more than that. You want over, they'll give you a ticket for it.
Yeah.
What size? God, it all depends. This year they're going after big sand crabs and small sand crabs. 2 years prior to that, they only like the small sand crabs, back to back to back on the hook. Years past, the big fish like the big sand crabs. So it all depends on the timing and the year.
Yep. Palomar's also making a telescoping one. If you're an old fart like me, you can, you know, do that without having to bend down too much. So these are kind of nice. Again, you know, right now it's probably not going to be something that you get too many of, but piers and jetties, you're going to find them around.
Yeah, the other thing, sometimes you'll find these sand crabs, they're like jelly. It means that they have freshly molted their hard shell off. They are guaranteed to get bit. If you don't get bit, there's no fish there. We like saving the soft shells for corbina because they're a lot of fun to catch. But all depends on how much time you want to waste looking for them, because you may not find any. I don't bother wasting time looking for soft shell sand crabs, but if I have them, I'll save them just for that special moment.
Yep.
Preferably you want the ones with eggs. The eggs will have a color like this underneath the digger.
Have a little orange section right below there. Those are the prime baits, but you know, nowadays during the winter you can go out and you can get lugworms, you can get mussels, you can get little pieces of sardine. Those little bay shrimp work really well, just market shrimp, you know, that'll work good.
Sidewinder crabs.
Sidewinder crabs work great.
You can buy clams from the market.
Yeah, so there's a lot of a lot of natural baits that you can either buy or dig up on your own, right? And ghost shrimp is one that you can get for free. You can get this in, you know, a lot of the bays back where the water's still and stuff. You can go out there and you can pump ghost shrimp. You got to find little holes in the sand, usually at low tide, and you can put this down into the sand right on top of the hole, pull this up, and that'll pull the ghost shrimp out of there. Or you can just go tackle store that sells them and buy some. But I like getting my own because they're usually a smaller size, which is nicer for fishing. And that's usually where I use a drop shot for something like that.
There is a 50 shrimp limit, so though you don't want to go over that. The other thing, if you find a place that holds ghost shrimp, keep it to yourself. They're hard to find up in Orange County and this area.
People will attack that.
Once on the internet, that's it. It's gone. People just pretty much strip mine the whole area, go over limit. You can't find any.
How are you hooking ghost shrimp? Because they always fall off for me.
You want a long shank hook, and you start from the bottom. You know how like a shrimp have that little vein? I just go straight up the vein, come out the head. And that's why I like the smaller shrimp. But you can do that with bait shrimp too. You know, just go to the market, buy, ask them what they're going to be throwing out tomorrow, and see if they'll, make you a deal on it. That works pretty good as well.
Yeah, what I'll do is, the shrimp is like this. The tail is right here. I'll hook it through the tail, shank and hook up here and back down. I'll do it that way too. And there's that string that you could tie around it also.
Yep.
But it's more difficult to surf because they're soft and you got all that turbulence. I'd probably more likely use shrimp when the tide is low, the water is calmer.
Yep. So winter time is probably the best time to try out different types of artificial baits. And man, there's a whole slew of baits that we can talk about, probably more than we got time for. But probably favorites would be, like a big hammer curly tail in motor oil, red flake, or we call morph. That's a great bait. Gulp in the camel color, the Camel Worms. Now these come in the 6-inch and they also come in the 2-inch. I prefer usually the 2-inch. It's a little easier to put on your bait. And we usually string that through, or you can nose hook them either way. Sierra Slammers have proven to be fantastic in the surf. I usually use a standard number 6 hook and just thread it through the nose and out as far back as I can get the hook, swim it back, or even dead stick it. I was catching really nice perch a couple of weeks ago, just dead sticking a Sierra Slammer. Then it's kind of swimming in the current, and very effective.
Yeah, with grubs you could work by casting, reeling in, twitching it. Effective method, like Ruben says, you could just let it go with the current.
Just holding it.
Just holding it, letting it.
Let the current kind of. That's where you have a little more weight. Maybe not so much current, but it's just sitting there, and the weight will kind of dig into the sand, and your leader will be out, and it'll just be swinging in the current. And it's amazing how that works. Now, I was using some scent at that time. Procure makes a sand shrimp, and they also have a sand flea or sand crab scent. I put a little bit of that, and it works great that way.
I think they got a bloodworm.
Yeah, they got a bloodworm as well.
What about color on the slammer, Sierra Slammers?
Again, the motor oil red flake, that's always been a hot color. I've had good luck with the clear with red flake, which is also a really hot color on this, as well as they make one that's kind of kind of like this one with like green on top and orange on the bottom. Those have been good colors for us. Red gulp also works well. What else?
Yeah, with the fewer slammers, we caught spot fin, perch, caught halibut on it. It's not exactly what I use for halibut, but the halibut have been a bycatch, and a lot more on the slammers than any other grub that I've used. And again, it was just a bycatch.
I've recently seen that the Gulf sandworms are producing them now, or maybe they used to before, but I'm just now seeing them in a white color. Have you tried those?
White works well, actually, especially in a drop shot for halibut. White's a good color. White and
I
pearl.
know that white's pretty popular. I just never tried it in the Gulf.
Yeah, I've never tried it either, but I used to use a white perch grub that was pretty good. Hard baits. You've got Castmasters, which are always been a staple, very productive. They come anywhere from 1/4 ounce to 3/4, but usually the 1/2 ounce is the more popular. You have your crocodiles, and of course Palomar Ahi is making the new flash jigs. This is kind of like the smaller version of their assassin jigs. They come in 1/2 ounce and 3/4. These things cast great, and they have good action, and they work really good, especially like on yellowfin croaker. From there we go to stick baits, like Lucky Crafts. Lucky Craft, and most of them will make 2 different models, one with 3 hooks and 2 hooks. Typically when I got a 3-hook one, I'll take the middle hook out, just because I don't want to mess with all those hooks. Once I get a fish on there, it's too dangerous in my mind, so I take them out. Casting for halibut with a Lucky Craft or anything else is kind of a dedicated sport. You want to go out there and try it, do what you can with it, but you're just going to be doing a lot of casting and probably very little catching. And that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to fishing Lucky Crafts.
Yeah, you do want to work structure. That'd be your best bet. But you also want to work the beach. When you're fishing for halibut, you don't want to stay in one location. I would cast, fan cast, move down the beach, fan cast, move down the beach. And when you reach a point where you're too tired, walk, change it up, change what you have at the end. Use another Lucky Craft, different color. Use a crocodile, Castmaster, swim bait, big hammer like this. This is a base smelt. These have been really good for me. But I see the biggest mistake with most halibut fishermen, they stay in one location and they're not getting bit. You gotta move if you're not getting bit. You get bit, work that area thoroughly.
Kind of school.
Yeah, there's usually more than one.
I'll pass this around. This is just some species that we found on there. I think we made a list one time, and I think we came up with 17. With the 17 species that we've caught on the sand. I think it was 17.
Yeah, probably.
But I mean, there's a good variety of stuff. Yeah, those are rare. Those are rare.
What is it?
It's sunglasses.
Oh, okay. I couldn't tell what I was looking at.
Yeah. But let's see. So we talked a little bit about this before. I'll just touch on it lightly because it's on your on there. But location is going to change daily. So walk the beach, stay mobile, carry everything with you, stay light. That's always going to be a good way to go. Time of day, it varies every day is different. So don't just think that it's got to be an incoming tide, or I've heard people say I didn't go because the tides weren't right. I go when I can, and I make the best of what I can find.
Yeah, some beaches fish well low tide, some at high tide, some doesn't really matter. Just go out there and fish. Just enjoy being outside. Remember, because you'll learn either way. You gain that experience.
Starting in December, thereabouts, is when the barred perch are going to start to give birth. They're spawning Well, they're starting to spawn now, I think, and they had another spawn earlier in the year, but generally December to February is when they give birth. They give birth to live young. So just be careful with them when you're handling them. They can get really big, and you'll know a pregnant perch because it'll have. That's a female that has that protrusion back there. I mean, it's ready to give birth. So you want to make sure that you handle them very lightly, as little as possible, get back in the water, and try to practice catch and release as much as you can, especially with these, so that they can populate the species. But this is kind of the staple during those cold months, because mostly that's what we're going to find when we're out there fishing. I think lastly, just be careful when you're out there, guys. Remember, swimmers have the right of way. Sometimes it sucks. People walk in front of you, surfers, all that stuff. You gotta make the best that you can. Again, we're staying mobile. A lot of times, you can tell them, hey, I'm fishing here. Do you mind? If they're jerks, just find another spot to fish.
Yeah, you could surf fish all day long. In Southern California, it does get crowded in the midday, especially in the warmer months. So it's usually sun up to maybe about 10 o'clock before the beaches get too crowded. Then again, about 4 o'clock until the sun goes down or even past. I don't fish too much in the evening anymore, but you can still catch fish after the sun goes down.
Yeah, no doubt. Cool. Well, I know we threw a lot of that at you guys. Thank you for listening. And do you guys have any questions that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I was hoping you would share like what you take with you, like how I know you have a backpack.
Yeah.
Like, can you just quickly go through like what you're
carrying? No, and everybody's different. One thing I forgot to mention is Palomar did come out with these here recently. It's called the Ensenada backpack, and they're really comfortable. They're designed to fit even the largest, the big boys. I measured this. I think it was 54 inches. Who's got a 54-inch waist here? So they work really well, but I know that Randy pretty much that's all he uses is a fanny pack, right?
Yeah. It all depends on you, how much you want to carry. We had the discussion earlier. I focus on a certain type of fish, corvina, perch, yellowfin croaker. They seem to bite the same things. I carry the gulp. I'll carry this, the Sierra Slammers. Also carry curly-tailed grub like this.
This is a good one to carry as well. The little Zeman crusties.
I don't go too much further than this. Even if I have bait, I'll always carry these with me. Definitely in the wintertime, I'm going to have all three of these, at least these three, what I can carry in a fanny pack. If I'm going for halibut, something like this, swim bait, stick bait like this.
So you'll dedicate what you're fishing for. You'll decide before you go.
Yeah, I'll decide before I go.
But my problem is, I got a backpack. It's got so much gear, and I use like one thing.
Yeah.
And and it's like all that stuff I brought, I didn't use it.
And that's 99% of the time that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But you go out there, and you want to be prepared for things. Like what I carry in my backpack might be some extra, like Randy was saying, maybe I got some extra lures of some sort, or, I was at the beach one time, and I don't know if it was dolphin or sea lions or what, but they chased anchovy all the way up to the beach, and I switched over to a small lure like this, and gave it a shot, but I had it available, right? And here, again, we talked about dressing in layers. So, if I go out in the afternoon, I'll carry a jacket, maybe carry some water. I got my rod holders, and I carry my net in one and an extra rod in the other. I carry an extra set of forceps in case I lose my my pliers, and I carry now. Okay, guys. I'm going to show you this, but it's proprietary, okay? If you guys copy me, you're going to have to give me royalties. All right, but this is what I capture my sand crabs into. Custom made, one of a kind.
I fished with a guy that used something like that.
Well, he's gonna have to pay me, but just
Oh, I'm sorry too.
sand crabs are just real easy to carry. Carry home for the next day. If you put them in some damp sand, not moist or wet, just damp. It's just enough moisture to kind of keep it cool. You can keep sand crabs in a contraption like this probably for, I don't know, 3 days, 4 days tops. Especially if you put them in a cooler with a little ice pack, they'll keep really well. So you can go on a Friday night, get your sand crabs, fish Saturday and Sunday, and you're good to go, right? So if you want one of these, write me and I'll sell you one for $22.99.
Yeah, I carry about 4 different colored grubs, and I always have gulp with me.
Yeah.
And I don't carry too much
gulp's always
more.
a good backup
But if
when
you have a
everything else
backpack, you
fails.
carry a lot more. But there are some guys who do carry a lot.
I carry it, and then I have like on the beach, I set it down there, and then I'll just like patrol, and I'll just look over if anybody's near my stop.
Yeah.
Oh, but you know what? We do walk a lot. I mean,
Yeah, I might walk 3 miles in a session.
we're definitely like 3 miles up to 10 miles we walk.
I'm gonna have to start doing that.
Yeah.
Buy a smaller bag.
Yeah, that's why. I think, Ruben.
Yeah, that's true. Because when I have a bag, I'm gonna fulfill the bag no matter how big it is.
Yeah, I'm always looking to see how much I can take out of my bag, not what else I can put in
Yeah,
it.
I've been doing that.
Yeah,
I'm just starting.
you just gotta kind of dial into what you want to use, and it's hard for us to say, yeah, you should do this, because everything is right, nothing's really wrong.
Besides bull shrimp and sand crabs, it's just regular fish market and shrimp also work.
A lot of different things. You got clams, you got mussels, which you can get, off the rocks or the jetty. You got
Shrimp.
Yeah, shrimp, different kinds of shrimp, squid, lugworms.
Clams.
Yeah, lugworms they work great. You can a lot of tackle stores carry lugworms. In fact, Shoreline imports them, and I've had those little packs of lugworms. If you keep them cool, they'll last a week.
Yeah, Aloha Tackle they started carrying.
They started carrying them.
Lugworms and bloodworms.
Yeah, so Shoreline, gotta thank those guys. They're the ones that import those worms, and they work great.
But right now, call before you go, because there's a shortage on bloodworms and lugworms too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get sold out pretty quick.
You guys ever get any activity using maybe mealworms or regular?
I've never tried mealworms. I've heard earthworms will work.
They'll work.
Yeah.
They fall apart though. Yeah. I used night crawlers before. They do work. It's just left over from fishing.
On the sidewinders, just so you know, not that it matters, but the limit on those is 35.
Really? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, even I learned something every time, right?
Yeah.
35 on the sidewalk.
I learned something.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Cool. I would have guessed it was 50 like everything else, but I guess not. But then trying to catch 35 sidewinders would be fun.
Yeah, it is. It's lots of fun.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot sandworms.
Sandworms, yeah. Oh, I hate those things.
People dig for them.
Yeah.
It all depends how much work you want to do.
Yep.
You could take a shovel, dig somewhere on the hardback, and you could find sandworms.
Oh, yeah.
They really work well.
Yep. Cool. Any other questions? We're good? Anybody want to do a raffle?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to get Robbie out here, see if he can say a couple of words.
So, guys, we want to thank Aloha Tackle. This wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for Robbie. He's a brand new store, opened last fall, right before Christmas. So he's got some good deals for us today. We appreciate him for doing that. I'll let him speak to that in a moment. We're going to do the raffle here. I just want to let you know that we want to thank Edward Halterman. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's Office of the Pacific right there.
Camera guy.
Edward has a YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Edward will show you how to fish those sidewinder crabs in the surf, so he's got a video on that. As far as the raffle goes, we've got 3 different raffle prizes. So we got a t-shirt, we got some bass tricks. This company has been out of business. They just started up production again. This is my #1 drop shot bait in the surf for halibut, guys. I've caught more halibut on this than anything else. So we've got this, we've got a Lucky Craft, We've got some other Bass Trick swim baits. We have a Phoenix t-shirt and a couple of Palomar jigs for third place winner.
All right, here we go.
So before he reads off the name on that, I wanted to just talk to you guys for a second. We're gonna close the back door to the shop. Because of COVID and the shop not being very big, we're only gonna allow 6 people in the store at a time, but he's got some great deals that he'll talk about as soon as the raffle's over. And so go around to the front, we'll let you guys in. All the surf stuff is pretty much congregated in one section in the store. But there's deals on surf rods, deals on surf reels, deals on Lucky Crafts, deals on terminal tackle, including this pack that's 35 bucks for 25 bucks, so that's a great deal. And go ahead and draw your name.
All right, guys. First one. And Tony Anthony.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
You bet.
That cherry berry Lucky Craft is hot. The hot Lucky Craft right now.
So second place, guys, we have a 2000 size Daiwa PG reel, great reel for the surf, a Phoenix rod shirt, some Phoenix hybrid 8X braid to go on that reel, an ahi jig, and another Lucky Craft.
All right, second one, guys.
Wait, that says Jeff Wade.
I was gonna buy one. Stephanie Dillator.
all right.
My steps are 30 years old.
For first place, guys, you get your choice, a 9-foot or 10-foot Phoenix Trifecta Light. See Robbie in the store. You get a Phoenix shirt and some Sierra Slammer swim bait. So that rod's a $200 rod.
And
Oh wait, I didn't put my ticket in.
Brandon.
Brandon. Where's Brandon? Not here.
He left. He left.
Right there. Do you have his ticket?
All right. Okay, do that.
You know it's your right now.
Oh, Brandon, you didn't win.
I'll take it.
Do you?
Okay, thank you.
Are you sure that's not your ticket?
You should have checked tickets.
How you doing, Brandon?
You're so honest.
So again, we really appreciate Ruben and Randy for all of their knowledge. These guys have been doing this for years. Thank you very much. Obviously, we want to thank all of our sponsors. So some of the sponsor stuff you can buy in the store here. Some of it you got in your goodie bag. But please patronize those companies. They help out when we do these seminars. If you haven't signed up to join West Coast Surf Fishing on the internet, please do so. Our Facebook page is great. We're almost at 10,000 people. We try to keep it clean and family-friendly, PG as we like to call it, and avoid a lot of drama. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to you. You can talk about your discounts.
Okay. First off, guys, thank these guys, Jeff, Ruben, Randy, for the awesome seminar. Also, I'd like to thank you guys for coming out, showing support. We do have some deals in there. Basically, it's a lot of the stuff that these guys are talking about today. As you walk in, there's a display kind of right as you walk in on your left-hand side that has all that stuff there. That's going to be all discounted, as well as the Lucky Crafts and some rods and stuff like that. When you guys go to check out, just give me that card that has that stamp on the back there. We know that you attended the seminar, and we'll apply that discount when you guys check out there. And yeah.
What's your pricing on Lucky Craft today?
It's going to be 16 bucks.
16 bucks for a Lucky Craft 110 or 115. So that's a great deal, guys.
Can we use it tomorrow? Tomorrow? If you bring your card with you, that'll be fine. Yeah, that'll be fine. That'll be alright.
So tomorrow's a cutoff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So today or tomorrow?
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're not open tomorrow.
Are you closed?
I'm sorry. He's closed on Mondays too.
You can definitely come tomorrow.
Sunday.
Sunday, he's
So
closed Sunday and
Tuesday,
Monday.
we'll extend it out till next week. Alright?
Nice.
Yeah, so if you guys can't hang around or anything like that, or make it, beginning of next week or something, we'll extend it out till next week.
But yeah,
Okay, but just hold on to that card with the stamp on the back, you guys. Okay? Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
There's some water up here, chips up here.
Real quick, guys, if you want, I have some owner catalogs, some fish bite catalogs, Phoenix catalogs, extra stickers if you want them. And you know, feel free to take anything that's left on the table except for the GoPro.
You guys, Ruben and Randy are going to stick around if you have questions. You want to ask me one-on-one, they'll be out here. And you just come around to the front.
Another month?
Yeah.
What was the final?
Physically, I'll be going into the end of the year. And they do this thing, they can't knock it, redeployment pay. So physically, it's like the last day in, it'll be like December 20th. They go on the 8th of January 20th. I know.
You got a nice.
Every deployment.
Yeah, you get 6 weeks to stay away, and then
I didn't even know.
I won't put this back in.
You know what?
I think it's more for people who are going to be training because they have job training assistants, people that are going to go into
See,
another
it's part of the
job.
transition.
They just made it universal that everybody.
Brother, you had to work along somewhere.
Are you jealous?
I am actually.
Yeah?
Thank you. COVID. Whoa.
What's your YouTube channel?
Office of the Pacific.
Office of the Pacific.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good one.
different fishing things on it. All right, cool.
Yeah, I do like float tubing, surf fishing, kayak fishing, bridge fishing,
Oh, really?
jetty fishing, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll forget.
Office in the Pacific?
Office of the Pacific. Yeah, yeah.
I'll put a note in
I
my
figure
phone.
that's my main office, you know, when I can. What's your name?
Mike Winchlow.
Edward.
Nice to meet you. I'll check out your
Yeah,
channel.
thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
I've used 6 times.
Okay.
Yeah, drop shotting, the halibut will just, you feel it fit.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you kind of lift up and feel it great. Sometimes it's just dropping around.
For the, when we use a slammer on the drop shot, should we just reel them in slowly, fast, or should we a little bit of jerk to it?
Well, yes. Try both.
Okay.
I mean, at a certain time you get tired and you just let it go. You can do that. It works. I mean, this is something that, you know, I kind of learned a little bit later with a friend I was fishing with, is going, well, you don't really in. The current is going to cause the action. We're going,
Yeah, that's
yeah, right. It does. So you could cast the grub real close and let it go with the current, cast it far, let it go with the current.
And
You know,
for example, if you use mussel or just regular market shrimp, you know, is it okay to use like maybe like a 2-ounce, 3-ounce sinker, 4-ounce sinker so it can stay, or should I let it with a 3/8 or 4-ounce sinker?
You could do both. See what this is doing. You know, these guys, this product contains a fish attractor, and we've been talking to them, and they're saying, yeah, our method of just letting it go with the current may not work as well as just letting it sit there and let the current hit the scent out.
It gets into that area.
Yeah, so I actually have a long rod. I'm going to give it a try and see and compare both. But the best way is to try both. I know the muscles don't do work.